Welcome in, everybody. We're diving deep today into one of humanity's oldest and maybe most misunderstood adventures, marriage.
Yeah.
Whether you're, thinking about it, you're brand new to it, you've been doing it forever, we're going to unpack it all.
I think it's interesting, with marriage, there's all this pomp and circumstance around the wedding and the ceremony and the societal expectations.
Right.
But it really boils down to two people creating their own world.
Yeah. And that's where we're going today. That's the stuff that we're looking at in our source material here is like, what's really going on when two people decide to kind of merge their lives together?
Yeah, the text really digs into that. Kind of peels back those romantic ideals and looks at what it actually takes to build a life together.
Yeah.
And what really struck me was the emphasis on vulnerability. Like it argues that marriage, maybe more than any other relationship, really pushes us to be seen, flaws and all.
Well, I think a lot of people assume that vulnerability just comes naturally with a romantic relationship.
But the source is saying, no, it's something that you have to cultivate.
Yeah.
It's an active process. It's not just about falling in love. It's about, day after day, choosing to kind of let that guard down a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's where the trust comes in.
Right.
The text uses this great analogy of a house. Anybody can slap together a flimsy structure.
Right.
But a marriage that endures it needs a solid foundation. It's not just about, having fun together or physical attraction. It's about building trust. It's about building intimacy, brick by metaphorical brick.
That really resonates with me because I think in other relationships, you can kind of present a very polished version of yourself.
Right.
But marriage is where the walls come down, for better or for worse.
Exactly. And those are for worse moments, like the disagreements, the misunderstandings, those actually become opportunities to deepen the connection. This text really pushes back against the idea of a perfect marriage.
It's saying that it's those imperfections, that willingness to work through conflict.
Right.
That strengthens the bond.
Makes sense. Yeah, because if you never disagree, are you even being honest?
Right, and it goes even deeper. It suggests that the way couples fight, their ability to move forward, even when there are differences, that can really predict the long-term success of the marriage.
So it's not about avoiding conflict. It's about learning to navigate it together without, sinking the ship.
Exactly, and the text goes into very specific techniques.
Yeah.
Like active listening, using I statements instead of blame.
Right.
It even talks about the importance of repair attempts. Those little gestures that can de-escalate a conflict and help you reconnect.
I mean, those are good tools for any relationship, really, not just marriage.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what's so interesting about studying marriage. It's like a microcosm of human interaction. There are so many lessons you can take from it about communication compromise.
Yeah.
The art of building lasting bonds.
So we've established that marriage is not a fairy tale.
Yeah.
It's about laying a solid foundation. It's about learning to navigate those rough waters.
Right.
But the source also, it highlights just the day-to-day experience, the shared routines and responsibilities that kind of weave a couple's life together.
Right. And it points out something that I think a lot of people miss, which is that there's a surprising intimacy.
Oh, yeah.
In the mundane, it's not always about, those romantic dinners or the big trips or whatever. It's about tackling that grocery list together. It's about figuring out the finances, supporting each other through work deadlines.
Right.
Even just having that cup of coffee quietly together in the morning.
I love that it's like finding those tiny moments of connection amid all the chaos.
Right.
And it makes me wonder, for our listeners out there, what's a seemingly ordinary activity that you've shared with your partner that's maybe unexpectedly strengthened your bond?
Yeah, that's a great question to reflect on.
Yeah.
The text argues that it's those small, consistent acts of love and support, more so than the grand gestures, that really nourish a relationship.
So it's about showing up every day, not just, the anniversaries or the big holidays, but just the everyday stuff.
Right. It's about finding that joy in the shared journey, even when the scenery isn't always, picturesque.
Life's not all about to-do lists and morning coffee, right? What about the big life events, the career changes or kids, just the curveballs?
Yeah, that's where the real test comes in. Our source material argues that those moments of transition, both joyous and challenging, they can either deepen the bond or they can expose those cracks in the foundation.
So it's about how you navigate those changes, both individually and as a couple.
Exactly. And that brings us to something really important, the role of personal growth within a marriage. The Force suggests that marriage can be a powerful catalyst for individual evolution.
Yeah.
It's about being challenged by your partner's perspective, expanding your own horizons, and ultimately becoming the best version of yourself.
And it's interesting because as we evolve as individuals, the marriage has to evolve too, right?
That's the challenge, you know? How do you support each other's individual growth?
Right.
While still maintaining that sense of unity, that shared purpose that defines the marriage.
It's a complex dance. You know, it's finding that sweet spot between togetherness and individuality.
Yeah.
And I think that's a perfect place to maybe pause for now.
Yeah, let's let our listeners digest this first part before we jump into how marriage navigates, you know, these ever-changing landscapes of personal growth and shared experience.
Yeah. So welcome back to our deep dive into marriage.
All right, so we left off talking about that balance, you know, personal growth and how do you maintain that strong connection with your partner.
It's like you're juggling these two really important things at the same time.
Yeah, and our source points out that this is where societal expectations can kind of complicate things even more.
Oh, yeah.
You know, think about like the traditional roles that we associate with marriage, like the husband's the breadwinner, the wife stays home.
Right.
Thankfully, those are evolving, but the expectations are still there.
Yeah.
And it creates this tension between what society tells us we should be doing and what actually feels right.
It's like you're navigating not only your own journey, but you've got all this outside pressure too.
Exactly. And that's where communication becomes even more crucial. You know, the source really emphasizes how important it is for couples to define their own vision of marriage.
Right.
One that reflects their values and their aspirations.
Yeah.
And not just conforming to, you know, what they think they should be doing.
So having those conversations about what marriage means to each of you, what are those roles and responsibilities and how are we going to deal with, you know, Aunt Kathy over here saying that I should be doing this?
Exactly. It's about creating that shared understanding, a roadmap for the marriage that feels authentic and empowering.
Yeah.
And that roadmap is going to look different for every couple. You know, some couples might embrace those traditional roles. Yeah. Others might want something more egalitarian.
What matters is that it's a choice you make together.
Right.
It's something that's just handed down.
Exactly. And that leads to another fascinating aspect of marriage that our source explores. Yeah. The evolution of intimacy. You always hear about keeping the spark alive. But the reality is, intimacy isn't static.
Right.
It transforms as we do.
Well, and I think we have all these ideas, especially early on, you know, of what intimacy should look like. And maybe those aren't always...
Yeah, the source really challenges that. It suggests that as couples move from, you know, that passionate love to more companionate love, intimacy kind of takes on these new dimensions. It becomes less about the fireworks and more about a deep understanding, shared values, emotional attunement.
So nurturing that deeper connection so that that intimacy can grow and change over time.
Precisely. And that takes work.
Yeah.
You know, it takes ongoing communication, a willingness to be vulnerable, and a commitment to exploring each other's needs as they change.
And that's not always easy.
No, it's not. You know, life gets in the way.
Yeah.
Routines take over.
You forget to prioritize it.
Yeah. The source actually offers some practical advice. You know, it talks about carving out time for connection, even if it's just 15 minutes a day, put the phones away and really engage with each other.
Oh, that's so important. It's just being intentional about it.
Yeah.
And both the physical and emotional intimacy.
Right. And it's about remembering that intimacy isn't always a grand gesture. It's those small everyday moments, you know?
Right.
A shared laugh, a meaningful conversation, just a touch.
Those can be so powerful, those little moments.
Yeah, they remind us why we're on this journey together in the first place.
Speaking of journeys, the source makes a really interesting point about marriage being a process of constant change. You know, as individuals evolve, our needs change, our priorities shift.
Yeah.
And the marriage itself has to adapt.
And that can be scary.
Right.
Yeah, change can feel threatening.
Yeah.
You know, especially when it comes to something as fundamental as marriage.
Absolutely. But the source argues that that change is inevitable.
Yeah.
And it's how we navigate it that determines whether the marriage thrives.
Like you're on a road trip together.
Okay.
And the scenery keeps changing.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be willing to adjust your course.
Right.
Explore those new routes. Sometimes even pull over and recalibrate.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
And the key, as the source points out, is to approach change with curiosity and openness, not with fear and resistance.
So seeing it as an opportunity to grow together?
Exactly.
Rather than something that's pulling us apart.
And that's where that resilience comes in, that we were talking about earlier.
Built on trust and communication and a shared vision for the future.
Right. When those elements are in place, couples can weather the storms and come out stronger.
But what happens when those storms just feel overwhelming? When the challenges just feel insurmountable?
Yeah.
How do you keep that hope alive? How do you stay committed when things get really, really tough?
That's where the Source dives into this concept of commitment, not as a rigid contract, but as a living, breathing choice that you make every day.
Okay.
And it talks about the power of rituals, those small intentional acts that reinforce the bond and remind you why you chose to be together.
So it's not just saying I do on your wedding day, it's saying I do to all of it.
Exactly, to the challenges, to the growth, to the ever-changing nature of it all.
And that choice, that willingness to keep showing up, even when it's hard.
That's what sustains a marriage through the ups and downs.
It's about recognizing that it's not a fairy tale. It's a journey.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a really bumpy ride.
Yeah.
But those challenging moments are where you see the strength and the beauty.
I think that's a great place to pause for.
Yeah.
Let our listeners reflect on their own experiences with change and commitment. And then we'll pick this back up in our final part and explore some of those amazing rewards that come from navigating the landscape of marriage together.
Okay, so we've talked about the foundations of marriage and communication and all the changes that happen and how intimacy evolves, but I'm really curious, what does our Source have to say about the rewards of all of this?
Yeah, it's interesting. The text doesn't shy away from the hard parts.
Right.
But it really emphasizes that those challenges are kind of woven into the rewards of marriage.
So it's kind of like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but for your relationship.
Exactly. The text suggests that when couples work through conflict together, when they support each other through those periods of growth and change, they come out the other side with a much deeper connection, a more profound understanding of themselves and their partner.
Yeah.
And a level of resilience that they might not have developed otherwise.
So it's not about avoiding the hard stuff. It's about knowing that those hard times are going to make the bond stronger.
And that resilience, that ability to weather life's storms together, that's one of the biggest rewards that marriage offers. The text uses this great analogy of two trees growing side by side.
Okay.
Their roots intertwining, providing support and stability as they face the elements together.
I love that it really captures that feeling of, shared strength.
And that strength, it goes beyond just the couple.
Right.
The Source talks about marriage having a ripple effect. It impacts families, communities, even society as a whole. It suggests that strong marriages actually contribute to a more stable and supportive social fabric.
Yeah, it makes you think about the legacy we're building, not just for ourselves, but for the people around us.
Exactly. And that brings up a really important question that the Source asks.
Okay.
Knowing everything that we've talked about, what one aspect of marriage do you think is most crucial for long-term happiness and fulfillment?
Oh, that's a tough one. There's so many pieces, communication, trust, intimacy, shared values, being able to handle change. It's hard to pick just one.
It really is. But if I had to choose, I think I'd go back to something we talked about earlier, that idea of commitment as a daily choice.
Okay.
It's about waking up every day and choosing to be in this relationship, choosing to love and support your partner, choosing to work through those challenges and celebrate the joys, big and small.
So it's not just about that initial I do, it's about all the little I do's along the way.
Exactly. And all those little choices.
Yeah.
Those acts of love and commitment, they add up over time. And they create this foundation of trust and intimacy that can really withstand anything.
It's like acknowledging that it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. There are going to be detours and roadblocks and unexpected turns.
Right.
But as long as you have that commitment to each other,
Yeah.
You can get through it all.
You can come out stronger on the other side. And that journey, with all its ups and downs, that's what makes marriage so special.
So there you have it, folks. A deep dive into the world of marriage. All the challenges and rewards and all the things that go into making a relationship last.
But remember, this is just the beginning of the conversation.
Right.
Keep exploring. Yeah. Keep learning. Keep talking to your partner about what marriage means to you.
And as you go on your own journey, whether you're just starting out or you've been at it for a while, remember that marriage, it's a dance between two people.
Yeah.
A balance of individuality and togetherness. And it's a reflection of the love and commitment you put in every single day.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time.